Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and I just watched the latest video, pilot lands on blocked runway, of 3 minutes of aviation here on YouTube. Now, he's got a very interesting first clip in this video that I want to analyze together with you guys and share my opinion on it. So I'd say we're just gonna go right into this one and take a look. So, here we are. Let's go ahead and see what is going to happen. Alright, just taking a small pause over here. Of course it's India. Something goes wrong involving traffic, it's typically the United States or India. Any long-haul pilot's gonna tell you that. But let's go ahead and see now. We can see we got a runway over here. We've just seen an approaching airplane over here, and there is a departing airplane just down there. Let's have a look. So, preceding airplane is still on the roll, while the succeeding airplane is just about to touch down. Now, this is a key moment over here. The preceding just went airborne, while the succeeding just touched down. So, technically speaking, there are no two aircraft on the same runway at the same time. However, we're talking milliseconds over here. And then the preceding departs, the succeeding lands, and that's the end of the situation. Now, what exactly happened there, and why has this almost been legal and safe, and what exactly went wrong? Let's go ahead and have a look. So, just like anything in aviation, if you want to know the rules, there is always an ICAO document for it. And this situation over here is governed by the ICAO Doc 4444, Procedures for Air Navigation Services, Air Traffic Management. And this one contains a procedure that is called Reduced Runway Separation. Let's go ahead and have a look into what that is. So, basically speaking, when you've got a large airport and a large runway, like for example here in our simulator in Frankfurt, then it is allowed for two aircraft to be on the same runway at the same time under certain provisions. Now, let's go ahead and take a look into the ICAO doc to see what those provisions are. So, we are starting at the very top over here, and obviously, provided that an appropriate documented safety assessment has shown that an acceptable level of safety can be met, lower minima than the standard, may be prescribed by the appropriate ATS authority after consultation with the operators. In other words, when they take runway length, aerodrome layout, and types and categories of aircraft involved into consideration, aka when they do a safety assessment, then reduced runway separation can be used. Now, the procedures have to be published and the controllers have to be trained. The procedure can only be done during the hours of daylight, and we're not using the standard daylight hours of aviation here, which would be 30 minutes prior sunrise to 30 minutes after sunset. Instead, we are using the opposite over here, so we are going down a safer approach. So we are only allowed to do this from 30 minutes after sunrise to 30 minutes before sunset to ensure excellent visibility. And if all of those have been met, we are allowed to have two airplanes on the runway at the same time. Now, let's have a look into the circumstances. Obviously, we are talking not about Category 1 aircraft, which would be single-engine propeller, maximum 2,000 kilos. Not about Category 2, which is single-engine propeller, between 2 and 7 tons, or twin-engine propeller less than 7 tons. But we are talking about Category 3 aircraft, which are all other aircraft over here. Now, let's have a look. So, certain minima need to be met, like wake turbulence separation shall be applied at any time, but the situation in which we're in, which is a landing and a departure, do not involve any wake turbulence separation, so that's not a problem over here. Visibility at least 5 kilometers, ceiling no lower than 1,000 feet, tailwind no less than 5 knots, and there shall be other means such as lootable landmarks to assist the controller in assessing the distance between the aircraft. Now, how would that be done? What's done usually here, since a safety assessment has to be done for each runway, controllers get things like taxiways and other items that would help them judge the distances on the runway. For example, here's Frankfurt Tower, here's runway 25 left. Now you've got a lot of taxiways over here. And if we just jump into our airplane over here and have a look at the charts, you can see that, for example, for heavy aircraft landing on 25 left, there is a taxiway 2,275 meters down the runway, which is Mach 21. If we now look into the airport chart, you can see that Mach 21 over here, 2,200 meters. So basically, Mach 23 is a safe 2,400 meters down the runway. So if we return to our bird eye view, the controller sitting here has to observe that the preceding airplane is at least here on the runway by the time that the airplane behind is crossing the threshold over here. So that's basically the way that controllers ensure the minimum distance over here. Now let's return to the ICAO doc and have another look at when we can even use reduced runway separation. So, going down here, there's two possibilities of when reduced runway separation can be used. And we are basically looking at this case over here, 7.11.7. May be applied if blah 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 blah, landing aircraft. Number 3, and this is relevant for all you flight simmers out there because this can be used on VATSIM as well. So, if a succeeding landing aircraft may cross the runway threshold when a preceding Category 3 aircraft has landed and has passed a point at least 2,400 meters from the threshold of the runway, is in motion, and will vacate the runway without backtracking, or a succeeding landing aircraft may cross the runway threshold when a preceding Category 3 aircraft, and that's the case in the video, is airborne and has passed a point at least 2,400 meters from the threshold of the runway. In other words, looking at our example here in Frankfurt, we imagine a takeoff on 25 left. The preceding airplane has to be in the air, and it doesn't matter how high he is. That's what I mentioned in the video. As long as he is a single centimeter in the air by the time that the preceding aircraft crosses the threshold and has passed those 2,400 meters down the runway, then you can use reduced runway separation. That would be legal. Now, going back to our video, let's take a very close look at the actual situation we've got inside of the video. So, we're just about here. That's our departing aircraft. That's the touchdown zone. He is just about at the aiming point. And here we are over the runway threshold with the approaching aircraft. Now this situation would be legal if that guy would be 2,400 meters down the runway. Now we got an aiming point here. So we know he is absolutely not 2,400 meters down the runway. Welcome to India. That's what you're expecting as a pilot flying to India. And that is nothing against people in India. That is nothing against anybody locally. It's just these things happen a lot over there. I'm not judging. I'm just saying that it is happening. All right. Now let's continue watching this. If you watch very closely, you'll see the preceding airborne traffic is airborne now, and now's the landing. So, if that airplane would have been further down the runway, it would have been a legal thing if that guy would have been 2,400 meters down the runway. Obviously, that was less than 2,400 meters, making the entire situation completely illegal and unsafe. However, as you can see, there is an underlying procedure that has probably simply not been executed correctly in this case. And now we can take a short moment to think about, okay, let's say you're the pilot of the airplane that's following. So you're the pilot of the landing airplane. Now, you're on approach. Obviously, there comes a point on your approach where you can determine, okay, the preceding is not going to be far enough away. However, you will not be able to determine the distance accurately. Now, let's imagine that we're on the approach, the preceding is already in the takeoff roll. What's going to happen now? Obviously, the controller is the one who's supposed to have an eye on the distance between the two aircraft and ensure that the 2,400 meters are met. Now, why do I think that the pilot of the landing airplane made the correct decision to continue his landing nonetheless? By the way, this over here is exactly why I think that he made the correct decision. You can see, if the landing airplane goes around while the preceding airplane is probably at a very high speed already, otherwise air traffic control would have issued instructions earlier on. But for the controller, it all looks safe and legal. So if you, as landing pilot, now decide to go around, you will have to raise the nose of your airplane, which means you are going to lose sight of the airplane that's about to take off, and you run the risk of a mid-air collision, since there is a good chance that you, on your landing, are going to be faster once you go around than the airplane that's just taken off. In other words, if you do a go-around, you're going to enter a situation where you will no longer be able to see the other airplane, you will probably be faster than the other airplane, and depending on your go-around procedures, think about the Boeing 737 where the acceleration starts in 400 AGL by the autoflight system. Then you could potentially enter a dangerous situation because of a potential mid-air collision, rather than, as landing pilot, you notice that all of this is going wrong, but you see that the preceding airplane is about to lift off, so you simply continue for the landing. Now, obviously, this is going to depend very much on the individual situation at hand, but I absolutely see how the decision of the landing aircraft's crew to continue the landing was the safer situation than to go around and risk a potential mid-air collision. Always remember, an airliner can be stopped in a couple hundred meters distance. The brakes are not going to like it. They're probably going to catch fire. But you're going to stop, you're not going to collide, and you're on the ground. That's probably the safer option than to risk a potential mid-air collision by going around. Well, guys, and that's everything there is in relation to this video. Hope you found it interesting. Leave your feedback and leave your impression on this clip in the comments below. I am going to link that particular video of 3 minutes of aviation in the comments below so that you can view the original one, and I'd really be interested in hearing your opinion on this. Thank you very much for watching. As always, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And then I'm really looking forward to see you all again on the next one.